What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So, in the news today was the announcement that Josh Gattis is officially leaving Michigan to go to Miami and work for Mario Cristobal in the same offensive coordinator role that he held at Michigan. And this news is huge on a number of fronts that I want to talk about in today's video, where I want to talk about what this means for Michigan first off, because I think it has a huge concern for them going forward, and what it means for Miami in the future. And then the impact it has on the rest of college football, in my opinion, which is directly tied to the other two impacts that I want to talk about. And I think it's a pretty big impact overall on the entire sport, potentially, all things considered. So let's go ahead and dive on into it. So first, let's discuss what this means for Michigan. And obviously, it's a bad look for the entire program right now. Between the Harbaugh debacle and now this happening, things aren't looking so great in Ann Arbor currently. In my opinion, the Harbaugh situation directly impacted this decision in multiple ways. First off, it's becoming more and more clear that Harbaugh wanted the Vikings job, and they turned him down after a 9-hour-long interview. So he kind of tucked tail and went back to Michigan, which is a horrible look, especially at this point in the calendar, right before National Signing Day. Everything that, comes with being in February. You have spring practice right around the corner. Your staffs are essentially finalized at this point. It's very important that you're on the same page at this point of the offseason. You don't need to be having potential head coaches leaving you and then coming back. And it's not a good look around the entire program. Right now, he kind of left his team hanging. It's just bad. Then it also makes it incredibly clear that he doesn't really want to be at Michigan long term, or at least he didn't. If he does now, he didn't before. And that can have a major impact on how your players and staff see you and follow you, which I'm sure it did to some extent with Gattis, which somehow relates to him leaving. However, it seems like the bigger thing that affected Josh Gattis leaving was behind-the-scenes talks about what Michigan would do if Harbaugh did leave. Most people believed that Josh Gattis would be the number one guy for the head coaching job in the event that Harbaugh left, but it seems like that's not how everything went down behind the scenes. I say that because Gattis reportedly sent a text to all of his former players basically saying, don't stay at a place where you're not wanted or where you're not appreciated. And that, to me, shows that he felt completely underappreciated there, and that Gattis felt like he was undervalued and that they didn't really want him there. And that, to me, is very convenient to happen right around the time that Harbaugh is, interviewing with the Vikings and potentially being replaced. For all of that to just line up that way so perfectly, to me, shows that when Harbaugh was leaving and talking to the Vikings, Gattis was in direct communication with the university, because the university, regardless if they're going to make that public or not, was 100% talking to coaches behind the scenes when the idea that Harbaugh may not be there came up, and they're supposed to. That's what they should do. That is looking out for your own school, and you have to do that if you want to be a good institution. And I guarantee you that they were directly speaking to Josh Gattis, probably more than anybody else, because he's in the building, he's in the program, he's very easy access for them, very readily available, and it seems like they weren't as high on Gattis as the public believed they were. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense for Gattis to say he felt underappreciated. Most likely, they either weren't interested in him at all as the head coach going forward, or it was clear that he wasn't the number one option, or they didn't want to give him a good enough contract, or something along those lines. And so that makes things very rocky with Gattis in Michigan, especially now that Harbaugh's back. They just expect him to act like nothing happened. Can't really do that. You can't expect him to do that. And so I think that is one of the major, if not the main reason that Gattis was interested in leaving. And it's a great pickup for Miami, but it's a huge loss for Michigan, not just because of the bad optics around that entire situation, or even the impact of losing one of the best offensive coordinators in college football, but also because Gattis was beloved by the players, and him leaving, especially leaving in the fashion that he did, probably has a direct impact on that locker room. Not only does Michigan now have a public image issue to deal with on its hands with the Harbaugh situation, but also a huge coaching vacancy that's going to be very difficult to fill, that dramatically hurts their odds at making another playoff run next year. And it likely will, or already has, caused some severe issues on their team in the locker room between the players. And I'm not necessarily talking about players wanting to transfer out of the program now, but it just brings up conversations that you don't want to be having and you don't need to be having on a championship roster. You don't need to have conversations about if Harbaugh wants to be there or not, or if Gattis, was treated poorly by the administration, or if he was run out of town, or those kind of conversations you don't want around your football team. It's not good for Michigan at all. Now then, let's focus in on the benefactors of this whole ordeal, the Miami Hurricanes under new head coach Mario Cristobal. And this is a program with a storied legacy and past behind it that has honestly fallen off of a cliff in recent years. And, that's kind of sad to say because of the history that Miami has, but you really can't deny it with how they have played recently. I say recently, really the last decade and a half almost. Miami has been very down. But they have a lot of momentum now and under a brand new regime with Cristobal. Hiring him away from Oregon is huge because of how good of a coach he is, but also because it shows that the entire Miami program is now much more bought into football than they have been in the recent past. They've committed to spending more money on their staff, upgrading their recruiting budget, upgrading their facilities, spending money in essentially all facets of the game, and you have to do that if you want to compete at the highest level of the sport, and that's what Miami seems to be committing to doing, and I almost guarantee you Cristobal would not have gone there if he didn't have those kinds of guarantees in place from the administration side of the program. And so it's huge for Miami fans to see that, because it is a commitment to being excellent at football that Miami really hasn't made, especially not as much as they would like to think that they have in the past. And so that is a big swing there. And then Cristobal's impact has immediately been seen, particularly in recruiting, as Miami hauled in the 15th ranked class in 2022 when Cristobal had very little time to fully assemble his class, being hired as the head coach essentially right at early signing day. To pull in the 15th ranked class is still very impressive in 2022 when you have that short time span to get it done. And he's done pretty decent in the transfer portal, nothing crazy, but he's done decently well. And that momentum should carry well into the 2023 class, especially when you look at the staff he's assembled at Miami already. They are good recruiters, they're very hard workers, and you can tell that's going to be a huge focus under Cristobal. And adding Gattis to that is huge for on-the-field success, as he has now proven to be one of the top assistant coaches in college football. He's absolutely changed life for Michigan last season on offense, getting into the playoffs for the first time ever, finally beating Ohio State. He took what was considered a somewhat woeful offense and really, really elevated it. And that's huge for what he did at Michigan, and now he's gone there, he's at Miami, he should be able to do the same thing there, and he also has great recruiting capabilities as well, and Cristobal is known for being incredibly demanding of his assistant coaches, so I assure you that he will make sure that Miami is recruiting well going forward. Everybody is working hard and doing everything they can to elevate that program. So Miami hiring Gattis takes the momentum they had already had under Cristobal now and all of the hype that they had building around the program, and that increases it exponentially, as Gattis can be expected to put out a strong offense next season immediately. And the ACC is pretty wide open at this point for the most part, excepting, Clemson, but even them, they're kind of down right now. We'll see how they are next year. North Carolina was thought to be on the rise, but they had a very bad season last year, and they're losing their star quarterback, so they have more talent than a lot of other teams, but you still don't know that whole situation. Florida State is kind of coming up, but they're still very down overall. Wake Forest is interesting with Sam Hartman, but are we really going to say that Miami can't win the ACC because of Wake Forest? I mean, I don't know. Pitt had a good year last year, but losing Kenny Pickett now. I mean, the ACC is pretty much wide open, at least for competing for the conference title. Maybe not for dominating the whole conference, but for competing in the ACC, it is pretty much wide open. That doesn't even mention all the excitement around Miami bringing back quarterback Tyler Van Dyke as a guy who can really elevate this team to the next level and capitalize on all this momentum they have around the program. Like I said, I'm not saying Miami's going to dominate in year one or win the ACC or anything like that, but honestly, they should be able to compete for it in year one under Cristobal. But that's not really the most exciting thing about the Cristobal hire and the Gattis hire here. The most exciting part is that if they can be that good in year 1, how good can they be in year 2 or year 3 or year 4? And that is where you really start to see the excitement around the program and the excitement of what Cristobal can bring. And now Gattis himself may not be a part of that all that long, because if he keeps doing well and doing what he has been doing recently, he's probably going to get a head coaching offer somewhere, and he may take that. But that's an inherently good thing then, because it would mean that his offenses are producing very well for Miami, which obviously means increased on-the-field success for them. With Gattis and Cristobal at the helm and Van Dyke under center, I see no reason why Miami can't take a major step forward as a program next season and finally start to reestablish themselves on the national stage. Which brings me to my next point, the national impact of this hiring. So obviously it has the impact in the sense that Michigan will likely take a large step back and struggle a lot more than previously anticipated next season in the Big Ten. Them returning to the playoff next year is incredibly unlikely at this point. It was already fairly unlikely, but now losing Gattis and the whole Harbaugh thing, I don't have much faith in the Michigan program next year. I'm not saying they're going to be bad by any means, but I don't consider them a real playoff contender at this point. And then there's also the obvious impact of the Gattis move at Miami with the immediate on-field impact there. With them taking over a pretty wide open ACC. The hierarchy there is very, very muddled. You could easily see Miami going way up the hierarchy, and it would not be anything out of the ordinary or anything, that would be just take some monumental effort. It's a pretty weak conference as it stands right now, and Miami can really take a stranglehold on it if they capitalize on things. Not saying they will, but if they do, and they have all of the capabilities to, at least to a greater extent than they have with Cristobal and Gattis and the talent on the roster currently with Van Dyke at quarterback. And so there's that obvious impact, but I think the larger impact here that you're going to see is the long-term impact, which is in the recruiting front, in my opinion. If Cristobal and Gattis can turn this early momentum into on-the-field success and then therefore more recruiting success, particularly in their own state, this can shift the balance of power in college football as a whole. This is a trend to watch in the years to come, in my opinion, in general, not just related to Miami, as we're seeing more traditional powers who are returning to life after years and years of being down in the landscape of college football. That can completely change everything about the sport going forward. Currently, the SEC and other big powers like Oklahoma and Ohio State and Clemson and stuff like that, they all recruit the states of Florida, Texas, and California better than those in-state programs currently do. But as schools like USC, Texas, Texas A&M, Florida, Florida State, and Miami are all starting to get it together, at least on the recruiting trail, it seems, that isn't as true anymore, and it won't be going forward. Teams like Georgia and Alabama are going to have a tougher time stealing the top talent from these other states, which, if that is to unfold, that will dramatically shift the talent imbalance, at least at the very top levels of the sport, going forward, and it could allow you to see a lot more parity in the sport going forward as well. And I think that Miami could be one of the best positioned schools to take advantage of this, as well as because of the countless NIL opportunities they have in Miami. I mean, the amount of NIL that you can get in Miami is absurd to think about. The amount of money that's around that program is absurd to think about. Also, it's a great campus. Everybody loves to be there. If they can get things rolling, especially with a guy like Cristobal and with a guy like Gattis, they could really take over this thing as far as, the state of Florida recruiting goes. And it's going to be an absolute battleground, but every single prospect that Miami's picking up is a prospect that's not going to Alabama or Georgia or Florida or somebody along those lines. And that, over time, can really shift the balance of power in the entire sport of college football going forward. And that's something that's very interesting to watch. I trust Cristobal a lot more than any of the recent Miami head coaches to turn this whole thing around. And if Miami, with Josh Gattis now, can have early success, the entire shape of college football could change to some extent, which, like I said, is a super interesting trend to follow. I'm not saying Miami will do that, but I'm saying they're in a much better position now to do it than they have been in a long, long time with both the Cristobal hire and the Gattis hire. Very excited for Miami. I see no reason why they can't compete for the ACC next year and really start to take advantage of a wide open conference. But with all that being said, that'll do it for this video. Let me know down below what you guys think about this hire in the Miami program as a whole going forward. Also, if you've made it this far into the video, be sure to leave a like because it helps out the channel tremendously. Subscribe to the channel as well for more college football content in the future because I will continue to upload college football content very, very regularly going forward. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.